The course offensive is indeed a huge gamble by Zelensky and his very last ace up his sleeve. But military experts indeed speak of a truly significant and major own goal for Zelensky. The counteroffensive could potentially quickly fail and then lead to Ukraine's capitulation. Let's take a detailed look at the experts' assessment of the current situation in Ukraine. Here we go. We all know that the course offensive is indeed Ukraine's very last chance to truly make a significant impact in this war and improve its negotiating position. Even Ukraine-friendly media view this offensive critically and indeed emphasize in every report that the last important strategic reserves of Ukraine are actually being used in this offensive. And if this offensive fails, and this new front collapses, it will trigger a chain reaction. Even the Bild newspaper is critical. An expert sees the danger that the course offensive could lead to Ukraine's capitulation. Bild newspaper's deputy editor Paul Ronsheimer discusses this with military expert Carlo Massala from the Bundeswehr University in Munich in his new podcast episode, Putin's Humiliation: How Zelensky Has Changed the War. Whether Ukraine can possibly decide the war in its favor through the new offensive cannot yet be assessed, says Massala. However, he is certain we are currently witnessing a colossal change in the war. This must be simply acknowledged as such. Massala says the worst case would be that the Ukrainian forces suffer a potentially devastating and severe defeat with massive losses in Kursk. This could lead to the Russian army advancing more quickly in the Donbas because Ukraine would then lack reinforcements. The political scientist strongly warns that this would ultimately lead to the inevitable capitulation of Ukraine. So, my dear viewers, you really need to listen very carefully here. And please, indeed, the Bild newspaper, which is usually very pro-Ukrainian and not even remotely objective, is indeed itself reporting on a possible Ukrainian capitulation as a result of the ongoing course of the offensive. And if even the Bild newspaper reports so negatively about it, then it really doesn't seem to be going well. And of course, one could say yes, but the Bild newspaper did speak of a capitulation in the worst-case scenario, and it wouldn't turn out that bad. 2001. Well, then let's take a look at the best-case scenario described by the Bild newspaper, because that doesn't look much better either. Massala explains that Ukraine has now captured more territory in Russia within 6 days than Russia has in Ukraine in the last 2 to 3 months. For the expert, this is an impressive achievement. Okay, capturing territory without resistance is an impressive achievement. Alright, but let's move on. At the same time, according to Massala's assessment, Russia has problems moving groups and material including tanks on a large scale to fight the Ukrainians there. The buzz case, and now it comes according to Massala, is that the operation runs long enough for the realization to set in within Putin's power circle that continuing the war could indeed have significant negative consequences for internal Russian stability. Wow, what a remarkable statement from the military experts indeed. So, that's truly the best case scenario. For the military expert, in his opinion, the principle has succeeded. He hopes that the political situation in Russia will become so significantly destabilized that Putin loses his power, a new ruler comes in, and then the war will end in the near future. And that, my dear audience members, indeed very clearly and undeniably shows how absolutely desperate even the pro-Ukrainian experts have become. Because in Israel only this year there were elections in Russia, and indeed Putin was re-elected there with 88%. Putin remains firmly in control despite the war. Absolutely nothing will happen. Absolutely nothing. And therefore one can say that this principle of hope will absolutely not work for the military experts. And the course offensive will indeed fail one way or another. Even the military expert admits in the same article that he himself does not indeed believe in the best case scenario. He says, however, the expert does not believe that Putin's position as Kremlin chief will be immediately threatened by the offensive. Indeed, because Putin is shifting the responsibility onto the governor of Kursk, and Russian military bloggers are targeting the Russian general staff chief, as long as the strategy of shifting responsibility works, Putin will remain firmly in power, analyzes Masala. Yes, so you see, even the expert doesn't actually believe in his positive prognosis. And of course, it must be noted that indeed Zelensky currently has great momentum because he caught Putin, as they say, with his pants down, as they say. But as soon as Putin stabilizes a stable, defensive and secure line, the counterattack will come. And as it looks, this counterstrike will indeed come simultaneously from two fronts. From the northeast, indeed, the Russians will come, and from the northwest, indeed, the Belarusians will come. Belarus is currently sending all its war equipment, including tanks, Iskander missiles, rocket launchers, and so on, to the border, and undoubtedly and officially, of course, for their own defense. But perhaps this defense also undeniably includes, in their view, the greater Russian homeland. I strongly and firmly believe that this major and significant offensive by the Ukrainians will definitely be repelled within the next few days, and then the momentum will undoubtedly be on the Russian side. Putin might then push all the way to Kyiv, as his troops would indeed also be advancing from the Donbas front in the east. And Ukraine has, as mentioned, indeed used its last strategic reserves for this counteroffensive. Therefore, Zelensky will certainly not be able to counter a new onslaught. And therefore, the big question in conclusion is, why did Zelensky indeed undertake this suicide mission despite even the experts on the Western side advising against it? Well, there are two reasons for that. First, as mentioned, he wanted to conquer as much land as possible and then enter negotiations with Russia. He wanted to trade Russian land for Ukrainian land. And secondly, he simply hoped to build up so much momentum with the offensive and thereby impress the entire West in order to, true to the motto, look here, indeed, all your money and weapons are well invested. Look here, what we can achieve with this, 2001, we can even march into Russia with it, and this is tied to the hope to impress the West by these successes, and then provide even more money and weapons. But the exact opposite is now the case. Even Chancellor Scholz announced yesterday in a surprising move that he will ultimately turn off the money tap for Ukraine. WebD writes that Scholz is turning off the money tap to Ukraine. These are the reasons. 2001, Germany is among the biggest supporters of Ukraine, at least so far, because for the time being the federal government does not want to approve any further aid. The reason, the budget leaves no more room for maneuver. And to me, it all looks like they're trying to force a decision at all costs, because the elections in America are in November, and then the war will be ended by Donald Trump anyway. So Zelensky is now going full throttle once again. It's basically a last-ditch effort to quickly take a lot of Russian land, dig in, and then wait for negotiations under Trump. However, I don't think Putin will wait that long. Indeed, it is significant. I believe the counterstrike will come in the next few days, and the whole thing will result in Ukraine's capitulation in the previous year. How do you assess the situation? Feel free to write your opinion in the comments below the video.